Well, it's an honor for me to accept the declaration to end child, early and forced marriage. And I also would like to thank the Ambassador of Canada and the Deputy Minister from Tanzania for taking part in this ceremony. I had the opportunity a couple of weeks ago to be with 15 years old boys and girls, most girls actually, and so, at least half of them coming from developing countries. And it was in their questions, this was very high on the agenda about how to live a life of opportunities in the future. And this is not only, of course, a question of avoiding violence against the basic human rights of girls and women, it's also about how to progress towards a whole range of associated health, economic, and educational problems. This is really a part of the basic question. If we want a sustainable development, how can we afford to keep half of humanity aside in some parts of the world? So it's a very important statement. It's a very important initiative. And as you probably know, I am also, when I return from here, once again member of the Danish Parliament, former speaker there, former minister in Denmark. And parliamentarians are close to my heart. In fact, I've also, over the years, been a member of the PGA. So the PGA's heart is close to the PGA.
Very good.
But before I stepped into office, I actually also spoke at the fourth World Conference of Speakers of Parliament. And one of my key messages there was that we need parliamentarians to push for decisions in the global community and, of course, also keep governments accountable to the decisions they took so bravely and so greatly a couple of weeks ago here at the summit of the United Nations. We all know that it's not always governments that are the best guardians for the UN Charter and the human rights, but here we have a document where each and every government, the 193 governments of the United Nations, have committed themselves to a very ambitious, I would say revolutionary agenda for the future of the world, including a very strong commitment to understand that equal rights for men and women and opportunities for girls are one of the basic preconditions for making this sustainable development possible. We will all have to keep an eye, a very strong eye, and have a very strong hand on making sure that the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals actually take place. I mean, the very fact that maybe for the first time the United Nations here in New York take a so far-reaching decision as the Sustainable Development Goals also is the challenge, because public opinion and many authorities in each and every member country may not be that committed as the heads of states and government were when they took this decision. So if we should be sure that this is actually done, that we eradicate extreme poverty in the next 15 years, that we are able to avoid the biggest of environmental catastrophes and stop climate change, we have to keep governments accountable. Parliamentarians have a strong responsibility here, of course civil society as well, but it's very, very important, and for that reason also, this particular document is a very important document. Let me say, finally, that it's not news for me realizing the need of equality between men and women. As a male Dane, being active in 1968 or around, I know that. And if I didn't know that at the time, I was told it by the women of the time. So it's not new, but for us in Denmark, and I think that all through the 50 years of political engagement and some 30 years of parliamentary membership of parliament, I have had very clear in my mind that on our national agenda, this was very important, and we have made progress, and progress can be made in each and every country of the United Nations. If you have in your hand the shared, the clear self-interest of the societies, the moral obligations of all of us to create real equality between girls and boys, men and women, and if we keep our authorities accountable to what they have actually promised already in the UN Charter, but with a much stronger underlining in the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you for the initiative.